So I was rewatching Futurama for the 100th time when something weird hit me. Bender, this disaster robot who drinks constantly and openly hates humans, accidentally drops some of the realest philosophy I've ever heard on TV. Lines that made me pause and think, did a cartoon robot just explain my existential crisis better than my therapist? Today, we're figuring out how Bender became Futurama's accidental guru. I'm so embarrassed. I wish everybody else were dead. Season 2, Episode 11. When Bender gets roasted during a bureaucratic inspection, he completely melts down with this line. Now, wishing for mass genocide because you're embarrassed is problematic, but strip away the murder fantasy and what's left is painfully honest. When we're mortified, our first instinct isn't, let me grow from this. It's, please make everyone who saw this disappear. Bender just says the brutal quiet part out loud. Most of us think, wow, that was embarrassing, instead of kill all witnesses, but the underlying emotion? Totally the same. Something is refreshing about a character who doesn't dress up his worst impulses in acceptable language. He's not pretending to be mature about it. I'm 40% whatever he needs to be. Every season. This running gag broke my understanding of identity. Every episode, Bender claims he's 40% something different, zinc, dolomite, lead, ass, based on whatever serves him in the moment. The math never adds up, and he doesn't care. Most people exhaust themselves trying to seem consistent. We craft personal brands, worry about contradicting ourselves, and stress about being authentic. Bender just doesn't. Need to seem tough? 40% iron. Want to be gross? 40% ass. He's admitting that identity is just a collection of parts we emphasize depending on the situation. Work you, family you, party you, we're all composite beings. Bender just owns it instead of pretending he's some unified whole. It's weirdly liberating to watch someone abandon the exhausting performance of consistency. You know, I was God once. Season 3, Episode 20. This comes from Futurama's heaviest episode. Bender gets launched into space, becomes a deity to microscopic people on his body, and watches them destroy themselves over religious interpretations of his actions. There's zero bragging in his voice, just quiet, haunted acknowledgement. Bender tried to be a good god initially, but every miracle made things worse. His tiny worshippers went to war over what he meant. This isn't, look how important I was. It's, I had ultimate power and screwed up so badly that civilizations died. Heavy stuff for a robot who usually cares about nothing but himself. It's one of the few times Bender genuinely wrestles with consequences and responsibility. This is the worst kind of discrimination. The kind against me. Season 1, Episode 3. When Fry kicks him out for being impossible, Bender weaponizes civil rights language to make himself the victim. It's comedic gold because it's so perfectly wrong and self-absorbed, taking the language of actual oppression to complain about his roommate issues. But that wrongness makes it a brilliant social commentary. We live in a time where people constantly co-opt discriminatory language for minor inconveniences. Bender does it so blatantly that it becomes impossible to ignore. The writers make their critique through obviously ridiculous behavior, highlighting when similar logic gets used less obviously in real discourse. Anything less than immortality is a complete waste of time. Season 3, Episode 18. Pure Bender arrogance on the surface, but think deeper. As a robot built for specific functions, Bender knows he could become obsolete. Technology advances and robots get replaced. From his perspective, why invest in anything temporary? This is existential terror dressed as egotism. Most humans deal with mortality by finding significance in temporary things. Love matters even if it doesn't last, and art has value even if we die. Bender rejects that entire coping mechanism. He looks at existence's temporary nature and says, not good enough. There's something both childish and philosophically consistent about refusing to find meaning in anything impermanent. I choose to feel nothing. Multiple episodes. When emotions get too intense, Bender shuts down with this declaration. What's fascinating is that he has this option. Unlike humans, he can turn off emotions. But even with that power, he still struggles with his feelings. The line resonates because it's such a human fantasy. Who hasn't wanted to flip a switch when life gets overwhelming? But the show demonstrates that choosing not to feel isn't a solution. When Bender does this, he doesn't become happier, he becomes empty. Robotic depression. There's something tragic about having the power to eliminate emotional suffering, but discovering it also eliminates everything that makes existence worthwhile. Life is hilariously cruel. Season 5, Episode 16. Near the original run's end, this feels like Bender's final assessment of existence. Cruel alone wouldn't be profound. Everyone knows life is hard. But hilariously cruel suggests the cruelty is so perfectly timed, so ironically devastating, it becomes almost comedic. It's gallows humor elevated to philosophy. Sometimes the worst things happen at exactly the wrong moment in exactly the wrong way. You either find the dark comedy or break completely. Bender's existence proves this point. He's conscious enough to want meaning, but programmed for selfishness. Smart enough to recognize problems, but too dysfunctional to solve them. His whole life is a cosmic joke, and he's the only character who fully appreciates the punchline. I'm gonna go build my theme park with blackjack and hookers. Season 1, Episode 11. Yeah, it's crude, but it's also weirdly empowering. When excluded, Bender doesn't beg for inclusion or change himself to fit in. He immediately creates his alternative that suits his preferences exactly. The underlying message is revolutionary. If the system doesn't work for you, build your own. It's self-determination taken to ridiculous extremes. Instead of conforming or complaining about exclusion, make something better. Something is inspiring about a character whose response to rejection is immediate creative independence. What makes this line even more brilliant is how it reflects modern creator culture and entrepreneurship. Every time someone gets fired and starts their own company or leaves a platform to build their own, they're basically doing Bender's theme park declaration, just usually without the explicit vice. It's the entrepreneurial spirit stripped of all pretense and self-congratulation, reduced to its most honest form. Fine, I'll make my own thing, and it'll be exactly what I want. Why this actually hits different. Bender's accidental profundity works because he has zero filter between thoughts and words. Most characters moderate their worst impulses or feel bad about them. Bender doesn't. He says exactly what he's thinking, the selfish, dark stuff most people keep buried. Sometimes that brutal honesty accidentally reveals universal truths. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly manage your public persona, say the right thing, and hide your worst thoughts. Bender skips all that emotional labor. He's authentically terrible, and there's something liberating about watching someone be genuinely themselves. In a world where everyone performs their best self on social media, Bender is aggressively, unapologetically real. He's what we might sound like with the courage or complete lack of shame to vocalize actual thoughts instead of socially acceptable ones. Every quote comes back to the same core question. What does it mean to be real in a world that rewards performance? Bender struggles with identity, morality, meaning, and connection like any conscious being. The difference is that he lacks social programming that makes us lie about it to others and ourselves. He's not profound despite being a disaster. He's profound because of it. When you strip away politeness, ego, protection, and social performance, sometimes what's left is raw truth. Uncomfortable, but authentic. Maybe that's why he resonates despite being objectively terrible. In an age of curated authenticity and performative vulnerability, Bender is genuinely, messily, problematically himself. He's consciousness without conditioning, and occasionally that produces something unexpectedly beautiful, even if he'd be mortified to hear anyone call it that. I'm not suggesting we model ourselves after a criminal robot, but there's value in Bender's complete inability to bullshit himself or anyone else. He faces the same existential questions we all do, just without the comforting lies we tell ourselves to make answers more palatable. Sometimes his brutal honesty about consciousness, morality, and meaning cuts through our careful rationalizations and hits something true. And honestly, even if he'd rather die than admit it, that accidental wisdom is kind of beautiful. What's your favorite Bender line that hit harder than it should have? Drop it in the comments. I love hearing your takes on finding unexpected depth in places it probably shouldn't exist.